Here we go. All right. Welcome everyone to the Wednesday, March 17th electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Transportation Commission. This meeting is being held electronically to protect public health and safety due to the COVID-19 virus and to comply with orders issued by the Governor, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Washtenaw County Health Department. Public comment will be available via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 938-5500-0747. This information is also available on the published agenda and in the public notices section of the city website. And this meeting is being broadcast on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at a2gov.org. So now I'm going to ask Kayla to please call the roll.
Thank you, Molly. We have received regrets from Commissioner Summers, who's unable to join us this evening. I will now call the roll. Please say here when your name is called. Commissioner Balderrama.
Here.
Commissioner Boland.
Here. Participating remotely from Ann Arbor.
Thank you. And just a quick side note. So Commissioner Boland has used the format that will be required beginning for the April meetings. So if you would like to test that for tonight, please go ahead. If you saw your email already, please do. In the beginning in April will be required to identify your location during roll call. Councilmember Briggs.
Here, participating remotely from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Felt.
Here.
Commissioner Hadimaki.
Here.
Commissioner Hall.
Here.
Commissioner Kleinman.
Here.
Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Parsons.
Here.
Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Dolan. Commissioner Hess.
Here.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Here.
Commissioner Margolis. Lieutenant Mike Sherba.
Here.
Commissioner Stupka. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Are there any modifications to the consent agenda? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. Okay, seconded by Commissioner Felt. All those in favor of the motion, please physically raise your hands. All those opposed? All right, and the motion passes, or the consent agenda is approved. So now we're going to move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for people to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID 938-5500-0747. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand by using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. Kayla, do we have any public commenters today?
We do.
Great.
So first we'll take a caller that the phone number ending in 677. I have allowed you to speak and you can unmute yourself and share your comment.
Hi, this is Michelle Hughes, and I'm calling about, I'm hoping I can get the Transportation Commission's help in advocating for some policy change at the AAATA. We have I tried to take a scooter on there one time, one of those fold-up electric scooters, and the driver told us that scooters aren't allowed on the bus. He said because of the battery. I think that scooters should be allowed on the bus. I think that having allowing scooters on the bus helps people who might otherwise choose to use a car to be able to make the choice to live car free. If you, like today, my girlfriend had a doctor's appointment that was 1.5 miles away from the nearest bus stop. And I don't think it's, I think it would be really helpful to not require people to, be able to walk 3 miles in order to go to a doctor's appointment. And, there do exist services like a ride for disabled people, but I think there's a lot of room between someone who's eligible for a ride and someone who is able to walk comfortably 3 miles and not be hurt and have it be safe. And I think that the electric scooters that you can get, they serve, they fill in a lot of transportation gaps. And I think that if we would if the AAATA would allow electric scooters on the bus, I think we would see more people riding the bus. We would see more people choosing to, take combined bus scooter trips instead of a car trip. And I think we would see people who have difficulty, who have some invisible disabilities that don't rise to the level of being able to qualify for a ride, doesn't rise to the level of having a doctor prescribe an electric wheelchair and an insurance company pay for it. I think that having an electric scooter on the bus would help with a lot of people to increase mobility options and to increase access. So I'm hoping that you'll help me by having a letter written by the Transportation Commission to the AAATA, asking them to change their policy on electric scooters. We had it's a fold-up electric scooter. It fits right under the chair. It's not a problem. The driver told us the problem was because of the battery, and they might be concerned about some sort of spontaneous battery fires. It's something you hear on the news. That means it's something that happens rarely. People trapped in their house because of invisible disabilities, that's something you don't hear on the news because it's something that happens frequently. And I think we should prepare for the common case rather than the uncommon case. And, they could ask people to slather themselves in garlic oil in order to prevent ghost attack. But I think a ghost attack is pretty unlikely to happen, so they don't do that. And I think that they should take a similar policy with electric scooter batteries, that they should solve the common case for people. So please help me by writing a letter to the AAATA about this. I'm Michelle Hughes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle Hughes. I will now mute your microphone, and I will ask the next caller to speak, and that is phone number ending in 128. So your microphone has been enabled. You should be able to unmute yourself and share your comment.
Oh, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi.
Thank you.
Yep, okay. Sure. Thanks for taking the time to listen to my phone call. My name is Jeff Houston, and I live on Granger. I grew up on this street, and I moved back to Ann Arbor into the same house that I grew up in, and I've been here for a few years. And when I was in 7th grade and going to Tappan, there was a motorcyclist who blew through the stop sign at White Street and was unfortunately killed. And I remember my father coming back home in the middle of the night covered in blood. And he was a tough guy. He ended up, going to work the next morning and getting up at 5:30. But I'll get to my point. There have been some recent improvements on Granger Avenue, and the traffic engineers have been great, and the police officers have been called out. They've been wonderful too. And just to let you know, there's a proposed speed study in 2021. And, since I grew up here and then recently moved back, the concerns I have about Granger Avenue is even with some of the road improvements, the length of the street just encourages acceleration and speeding. There's a lot of speeding going way past the 5-mile-per-hour speed limit. And after the pandemic, there'll be a huge increase in volume. There's also a stopping and signaling issue. People do not stop at stop signs. They might tap on their brakes. Very few people stop or use their turn signals. And I like to go for a walk. Very few people will recognize, even on Granger, that there's someone waiting to cross the street, and they will not stop or even slow down. It seems that the improvements here, Golden Avenue, and I don't live on Golden, but it seems like that's preventing a lot of people from turning down Golden Avenue the wrong way. Let's see here. I've also spoken to Julie Grand, who is my city council rep, and she's been great. There are a lot of animals that live on the street, and we have a Lower Burns Park cat, and every couple of weeks there'll be an animal that's loose from another neighborhood, or someone in the neighborhood, they've lost their animal, a dog or a cat, or they sneak out of the house. And I'm just wondering if the commission, in coordination with the city, could consider perhaps speed humps or speed bumps or stop signs. I've just been told by lifelong residents that stop signs are kind of a dirty word with the city, but I'm not passing judgment on that. And I think one of the issues is that I know since I moved back, Ann Arbor is so dense downtown that this is just a natural continuation of congested streets, and the noise on Granger Avenue too. So I'm wondering if someone could look at perhaps a 4-way stop on Golden and Granger, or speed bumps, or speed humps, or something else, because as a matter of fact, not to bore everyone, I'm sorry, I'd want to give as much information as I could. Even a few days ago, there was a gentleman that just blew through the stop sign right at Golden and Granger, where that motorcyclist was killed years ago. And I'm just amazed that no one has been seriously injured, as far as I know, on Granger lately. And I just politely said, hey, there's a stop sign there. And I got the old middle finger, and it wasn't a nice one. So one of the issues too, besides people just being totally distracted and wanting to get where they want to go, regardless of the time of day, or if there's work or school, and it's all demographics. It's all people just wanting to get somewhere because of the cut through here between Packard and State Street.
I have to ask that you could wrap up your comment. Your 3 minutes.
Oh,
have
sure.
passed. Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just want to thank everyone, and sorry to unload a lot of information.
Thank you for sharing that feedback.
You're welcome. Bye.
That completes our public comment at this time. We do not have any other callers.
Okay, thank you, Kayla, and thank you to our public commenters. Next up, we invite civil engineer Dave Dykman to present the street resurfacing and related projects for 2021.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. And happy St. Patrick's Day for those of you who celebrate. It's generally a sign that spring's right around the corner, and with that comes construction and the frequency of orange barrels around the city that we sometimes don't like to see, but it's kind of inevitable with construction. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and can you all see that?
Yes.
So I thank you all for the opportunity for me to again present this year on the city's planned street resurfacing improvements for 2021. Some of you may have seen parts of this presentation before. We've kind of tried to dress it up and add some photography to it to make it less mundane. So with that, I don't know why my screen's not. There we go. So with regard to resurfacing, there are several core elements that are involved in the resurfacing projects. And I think I skipped this slide. Let me go back, sorry. Resurfacing objectives are to return the pavement to a good or very good condition, and also enhance the functionality and safety for both motorized and active transportation users. What you see depicted here is a project we did on Stone School Road a couple years ago, south of Eisenhower Park, where we did a complete rehabilitation effort, and we added bike lanes in both directions along the sides of the road. In terms of resurfacing itself, there are several core elements that are involved. It involves using or identifying the projects using our pavement asset management data, which we collect generally on every 2 or 3 years. I think we're going now to a 2-year cycle on that. We use what's called the PACER rating scale. It's a scale on 1 to 10, with 1 being pavements that are considered failed or in very poor condition, up to 10, which are pavements that are considered to be excellent. The projects are programmed annually in the capital improvement plan based on funding availability. They may be both structural and non-structural. So structural projects would be more involved in usually a partial or full depth pavement removal, versus preservation, which are considered to be non-structural, which could be maybe the removal of a portion, the very most upper portion of the pavement, or some type of surface seal that we would place on top of the pavement to treat that. They're generally contained within the existing footprint of the road. They involve minimal survey data collection. Other data collection is quite involved. Staff usually goes out starting sometime in the late fall and begins to evaluate the condition of the road, including the pavement, the curb and gutter, the drainage along the road, and they assess the conditions and identify the needs, and begin to measure and collect the data in efforts to prepare the project for design and bid the coming season. Design is generally not real detailed. It's very minimal. The scope is usually just to address the pavement condition and stay again within the footprint of the road. And there's generally no additional right-of-way or easements not needed to complete these projects. Some of the typical treatments that are considered resurfacing are, again, like I mentioned, preservation, which are generally non-structural. So these pavements are in fair or relatively good condition, but they need to be addressed in order to, what we call preserve the life of that pavement and bring it back up into a very good condition. Sometimes they're restorative in nature, which they're structural. So the pavements are fair or in poor condition, and they need to be brought back into a good condition, usually using generally thicker pavements in order to do so. And then rehabilitation, again, are structural type projects where they're more involved. They usually involve the removal of the entirety of the pavement and replacement of that pavement. What's depicted here is a project we did last year on Geddes Avenue between Washtenaw and Observatory, where we removed the upper, I believe it was upper 4 inches of that pavement and restored it to a good condition. We also look at the opportunities when we're conducting this work. Those include non-motorized opportunities that are identified in the transportation plan. They can include things such as adding bike lanes, narrowing up traffic lanes, possibly reconfiguring the traffic lanes, going from like a 4 to 3 or a 3 to 2 lane configuration or conversion, adding mid-block crossings, and then adding, potentially sidewalks or asphalt paths along the corridor, or even filling in sidewalk gaps and addressing asphalt paths that are in poor condition that may exist along a street that's been identified for needs. It also includes drainage or stormwater management opportunities, which include removal and replacement of the concrete curb and gutter, removal and replacement of stormwater, the curb drain inlets, changing the pavement cross slope to allow the water to get off the road faster and better manage that, adding infiltration basins along the road or beneath the road. In some cases, that's rarely done as part of a resurfacing project, but there may be opportunities where it can be addressed that way. Also adding oversized storm sewer pipes or drainage control structures. Again, those would be in rare cases. Generally, not done with resurfacing, but if there is opportunities, they may be considered. And lastly, we like to bring up the facilities on the street into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So this includes replacing sidewalk ramps like you see here in the picture in front of you, some work we did on Granger last construction season. We're also adding or addressing small segments of sidewalk or ramps that might be missing along a project corridor. And then just repairing ramps. There may be ramps that are there, but they're not necessarily compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and so we'll remove and replace those. In this situation, we actually removed and we added new ramps here, and we actually created a bump out. I believe this is at the East Park Place or Golden intersection. I don't recall exactly. Oops. So in terms of typical projects that involve resurfacing is kind of a general term, and can be used in a number of ways. In terms of the annual resurfacing project, that usually involves replacement of the asphalt pavement in some shape or form. It could either be a structural improvement or a preservative type treatment. Another project that involves resurfacing is our street preventative maintenance project. Work done on these projects are oftentimes just surface type seals that we place on top of the pavements. Other projects may be standalone utility projects where we're replacing the water main, the storm sewer, or the sanitary sewer, and we again are able to address the pavement condition at the same time. And then we also have just standalone resurfacing type projects that we might do. These are generally more complex type projects. They may involve federal or state funding. And if that's the case, then they need to be administered through the Michigan Department of Transportation, and they would be kept as a separate project. Just to touch on real quickly of what's planned for this year's street resurfacing project. The main focus area is in the southeast part of the city. We call this area 2. We've divided the city up into essentially 8 different areas in terms of the local street network. And each of these areas has approximately 23 miles of streets included in each. And then we look at the pavement conditions within those areas that are eligible for resurfacing. Last year, our focus was primarily area 6 and a little part of area 5. We've done work in the last 3 or 4 years in areas 1, 8, 5, and a little bit in area 2. But like I said, most of the work that's planned for this coming construction season is focused in area 4. So in that project focus area, we're planning to rehabilitate approximately 12 local residential streets, perform preservation work on 4 local residential streets. We're going to rehabilitate segments of the asphalt path along Packard Street from Independence Boulevard to Platte Road. About half of that path is concrete sidewalk, and the other half is considered about a 6 to 8 foot wide asphalt path, and we're going to be addressing the asphalt portions of that path. Also involved is filling in sidewalk gaps on Manchester Road. There's a gap that crosses the frontage of Manchester Park, just south of Washington Avenue. And then there's a gap fronting on Yost Boulevard and Eli Road fronting the Forest Brook Athletic Club that will be filled constructing new sidewalk at both those locations. Project also involves a restoration on 2 major streets, those being South Huron Parkway at Lindsay Lane. There's a deteriorated, I guess it's a right turn or deceleration turn lane into Lindsay Lane. That's what we're going to be removing the entirety of that pavement and replacing it. And then the asphalt pavement on South Industrial, north of Eisenhower Parkway and south of East Stadium Boulevard will also be removed and replaced. As I mentioned, there's several different types of projects that conduct resurfacing work. Another one is it's currently underway and it's actually started back in July, is the FY 2021 Street Preventive Maintenance Project. This project involves preservation work on 8 major streets and 26 local streets, and also crack filling on approximately 96 lane miles of both major and local streets. This preservation work mainly entails what we call a cape seal. It's a surface seal that goes over top of the existing asphalt pavement. It's a 2-part process that involves a chip seal that you'll commonly see done on a lot of rural county roads. The purpose of that is you put down a liquid asphalt emulsion and then chip stones over top of it. And that emulsion is intended to seal a lot of the cracking that's visible in that pavement. Most of it's minor cracking. The major cracking is usually addressed in part of the surface preparation that's done, and you can see that's depicted here, where this crew is out crack sealing the streets in advance of a surface treatment that we would place. And then over top of that chip seal, we would place what's called a micro surface, which is it's a product that involves a much more finer aggregate. It's very, very durable, and it's intended to extend the life of the pavement and really retard or prevent potholes from forming in that street. For generally, we look at a 5 to 7 year period. These projects and other can be found on the construction projects webpage. This was just recently updated. There's a map on there that shows all of our planned street work for the coming construction season, and also a list of the various types of projects that we'll be undertaking during the coming year. I wanted to speak just briefly about a couple major street projects that involve non-motorized improvements. These are both standalone projects. They're not part of either of the other 2 projects I just mentioned. The one is Plymouth Road. This is a resurfacing project between Murphin Street and Lower Broadway Street. And then the second is South Industrial Highway. And that runs from East Stadium Boulevard to East Eisenhower Parkway. As I mentioned, the limits are from Maiden Lane or the lower Broadway area, all the way up here to Murphin and Upland Drive. Replacing the asphalt, where there's some curb and gutter replacement, other non-motorized improvements, involving the paths, adding some ramps, some ADA upgrades to the sidewalks and pathways along the corridor here. And it also involves the addition of a new bicycle feature that includes a buffer bike lane. This is the lower end near Broadway Street. So what's being proposed is a bike lane in the west or southbound direction, and the narrowing of lanes. So currently this is a 4 and 5 lane pavement. We'll be narrowing the lane. What's proposed is we narrow the lanes to 10-foot lanes, and then we add a buffered bike lane. The buffer varies. Here it's shown at 1 feet with a 4-foot bike lane. That's the footprint can only accommodate that at that location. As you move further to the north and east, the bike lane does widen out to 5 lanes, and the buffer continues to widen to 5 feet. So this is what it's proposed to look like at Barton Drive. where again, we have the westbound bike lane at 5 foot wide with the 5 foot buffer. And then moving further to the north and the east, this is up at the easterly limits, where we have again the 5 foot wide bike lane and buffer, and it tapers down to essentially 1 foot here at the Murphin intersection. With regard to South Industrial Highway, this project is being driven by the need to repair the concrete pavement and create a smoother surface and extend the life of that roadway. New features involve bike lanes, green pavement, and a bicycle box. New pedestrian features include a mid-block crossing near the AATA's or the AAATA's facility or the rides facility. And then we'll be upgrading ramps along the corridor, and particularly at the Stimson Street and East Stadium Boulevard intersections to support accessible push buttons. Here at the north end of the project, what we're proposing, we're not proposing any lane changes in this stretch from Stadium to Stimson. There's enough width where we can reconfigure the laneage to add bicycle lanes in both directions. So right now we currently have 2 left turn lanes northbound, a through and right turn lane northbound, a southbound through lane, and a southbound right turn lane. We're proposing to keep the lane configurations the same, but like I said, there's enough width here where we can narrow these lanes to 10 feet and add bicycle lanes in both directions in that segment. So from Stimson looking south toward Astor and Jewett, this is where we're proposing a lane reconfiguration. Currently, there's 2 lanes northbound with a through and a through right. There's a left turn lane at the Stimson intersection, and then there's essentially 2 lanes that operate southbound. This extends for about 1,000 feet plus or minus south of Stimson Street. What we're proposing here is to add a center turn lane, keep 2 lanes in both directions, 1 northbound, 1 southbound, add an approximately 6 foot wide buffer opposite the traffic lanes, and then a 5 foot wide bicycle lane in each direction. And south of Astor, the corridor, the lane configuration is going to remain the same. We do have wide existing through lanes in each direction that gives us the ability to add a bike lane in each direction. So we'll have 3 10-foot lanes and 2 5-foot bike lanes in each direction. That's what's proposed. And lastly, down at the Eisenhower Parkway end at that intersection, again, we're not proposing to change the lane configurations, but we do have quite a bit of width in that pavement. And we do have the availability to accommodate a bike lane for cyclists that want to go through the intersection or turn left and head east on Eisenhower Parkway. For those cyclists that want to continue and go to the west on Eisenhower Parkway, they will share the right turn lane with motorists. So you can see here what's depicted as a bike lane between the right turn lane and the through left lane, and then a shared vehicle / bike lane for right turn cyclists and motorists. And I mentioned that we're planning to add a new crosswalk directly adjacent to the rides facility. This will serve both patrons and drivers that come to the facility on a daily basis. There was several of these added along the corridor within the last year or so. This location will match those. It will include the addition of rectangular rapid flashing beacons similar to those other crosswalks. I don't believe there's any street lighting proposed here. I believe it already exists, so that's taken care of. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Great, thank you so much. If you could unshare your screen, it will be easier for me to
Sure
to follow
can.
folks. So we just have a couple minutes for questions, but let's try and at least get a couple in. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Lee.
With respect to some of the concrete work that's being done, are there any efforts on the city to look at incentives for decarbonizing concrete or requiring contractors to show what the carbon emissions of their life cycle looks like as far as transportation assets? So whether it's carbon capture or CO2 injection into concrete, are there any discussions about asset improvements in that respect?
I can field that question. There's actually some discussions going on right now, and I've been asked to participate in a group that's looking at that very topic right now. So while that's not in our specs right now, we're going to be looking at that in the future.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Very exciting what you guys are doing. I'm obviously in support of more bike lanes, so thank you.
Did I see Commissioner Parsons with a hand? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. David, thank you very much for the presentation. And this might be a question that's a little bit broader toward Nick and Raymond. I very much like to see that the Packard pathway is going to get repaved. It's in pretty bad shape. But I also noticed that there's still gaps in terms of actual connectivity. It goes from 8-foot path, I assume, to 4-foot sidewalk at both the Eisenhower sort of Y and then near Packard and Platt. And so I'm just wondering, are these the times to dovetail some of these connections, or is that just sort of out of the scope of these sort of projects? And I'm just thinking big picture for the city, does it make sense to try to connect these sort of projects and connectivity when we are in the corridor and already putting finance and labor power toward fixing these corridors? We're not going to, even if we do the perfect pavement, we're still not going to connect the things that are going to make mobility devices and off-road cyclists and pedestrians, really have a corridor. I hope that's enough, and maybe others can chime in on that theme.
So Commissioner Parsons, could you clarify, are you talking about facilities along East Packard, or are you talking about kind of the connections to the roads that traverse it?
So if you look at the map, and I thank you for the city for putting the map together. If you look at the map, you can see on Packard, along Packard, from the Y intersection at Eisenhower, where Packard sort of comes in, up to Platt, the green asphalt path resurfacing project stops short by about a block in both directions. So for Platt, you have to go to a 4-foot sidewalk near the Rite Aid there, which is it's really narrow. And going into that Y intersection before you get to a bike lane that goes north to Packard, which is really nice. But that is a really dangerous section, and it's awkward to go through. It's narrow. There's people that are always there. I think that there's some elevation changes as well, so that it feels really narrow. So it's one of those things that we can have a really nice, smooth pathway for all users. But if there's not connectivity, it sort of defeats the point. And sorry, I spoke really fast, but I don't know if that's enough, Raymond.
What I guess what I'll say right now is, what we have, funding set aside for right now is trying to fix the condition of the paths. So we don't have money set aside right now for trying to widen anything out there. That's something we can certainly look at in the future, but it's not something we have slated for right now. I don't know that much about the details about what's up right near that intersection and what facilities are there. But if it's regular concrete sidewalk there, my guess is that there might be some right-of-way issues behind widening it right now. So there's a good possibility we would need to get easements, things like that. if we were to widen that. I'm not that familiar with it, but I'm just speculating there.
I anticipate there are probably some right-of-way issues there, and because there is a retaining wall directly behind that sidewalk in some of those locations. So
I guess maybe the bigger picture question is, does it financially make sense for the city to look at these corridors and try to address it all at once? Or is this sort of piecemeal approach financially, it doesn't really matter, if that makes sense? If we already have crews out there and we're potentially going to widen it in the future, does it make sense to invest a little bit more to make that corridor work? Or financially, does it not really matter?
That's kind of tough for me to answer it at the moment. I think it would take a little bit of analyzing some of our bids and things like that to try to determine through different mechanisms how it best works. In this particular case, I guess I would say in general, it does make sense to, if we have a big road project where we're doing a lot of stuff on a road, it probably would make sense to do that. What Dave's doing out here is just resurfacing asphalt paths, so it already is within its own nature kind of piecemeal, trying to improve some condition of some paths that we know are in bad shape. So there's not a bunch of other work going on in the area. There's not really any other concrete work going in the area where we would be able to widen those other paths. So it kind of already is that way. If we were reconstructing Packard Road, for example, I would say that would be absolutely an ideal time to handle all that stuff. But this is kind of a come in quick, get the path up to better shape and move on. So
thank you so much. We are out of time for this agenda item, unfortunately. Those of you who still have questions or comments, Kayla, should we just send that to you and you can pass it on to the right people?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So sorry that we ran out of time on this one. I also have a couple things I'll be emailing about. So we are going to move on to invite DDA Project Manager Amber Miller to provide an update on people-friendly streets.
I am just trying to share my screen here. Hello, everybody. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for having us back to talk about our second round of people-friendly streets projects. At the beginning of this set of projects, the DDA board provided some clear direction about what we needed to accomplish. So they have asked us to complete a design for the State Street project and then identify 4 other street projects with a total budget of $7 million. And then as part of the community conversations, to also identify and document other long-term projects and needs. And we will be shaping these projects through our values. And what you see on your screen is a set of values adopted by the DDA board in July of last year. These are not listed in priority order, but those first 4 values are particularly important to us: safety, equity, inclusivity, and resiliency. And in alignment with those values, we are working with some of our partners. Something that's unique to this round of people-friendly streets projects is our partnership with the Housing Commission. So we are working with them to upsize some infrastructure like water mains in order to support affordable housing development in the downtown. And then we are, of course, also working with the Office of Sustainability and the Transportation Department to meet our carbon neutrality and Vision Zero goals. We've been using these values to start identifying possible projects and opportunities. And most recently, we have been discussing those opportunities with the community. And so I'm at this time going to ask Oliver Kiley and Addie Weber to walk you through what we heard.
Great. Thank you, Amber. This is Oliver Kiley at Smith Group. We've been working with the DDA and the city, looking at these projects and these opportunities for a while now. And as Amber mentioned, we just completed a round of public engagement and outreach last week. That was 3 days worth of meetings. And in addition to some of the public sessions that many of you may have been involved with or attended, we had a number of other stakeholder meetings that were sort of going on between and around those public sessions, where we've been reaching out to business owners, groups like Community High School, the Transportation Commission, some of the representatives from the commission here we met with. During that time, we met with representatives from the Disability Commission as well. And we're continuing to have stakeholder meetings. We've even had a few more that have carried on into this week as we've begun looking at design options for all of these routes. Next slide. And something everyone is probably familiar with, the pilot projects that were done last year. And one thing that we just wanted to iterate is that the feedback that we heard through these public sessions was broadly very consistent with what we were hearing on the pilot projects, particularly in regards to the bikeway from, among bikers and the bikeway users. There was a lot of support expressed for the pilot projects, and that support was reiterated through the workshops last week for where those projects overlapped. I'm continuing to hear support for a lot of the flexible uses on streets in the commercial areas to support business activity. And we'll get into the details on some of the recommendations that came out on that. And then just overall, I think an appreciation for a continued focus on safety and sort of prioritizing people and putting people at the center of the equation as we look at how downtown streets are configured. Some of the big findings from the workshops last week, and I think this is somewhat repetitive of what I just said, but building out the remaining kind of low stress network for connections, non-motorized connections going through and around the downtown, continuing to coordinate with the rest of the work that the city's doing, coming out of the transportation master plan and looking at those corridors into the downtown and making sure that we're aligned there. In the commercial areas, we had a lot of conversation around pursuing kind of curbless street designs that would provide more flexibility for how those streets are used. And one of the partnerships that's been unique in this round of people-friendly streets projects is working with AAA TA on that block of 4th Ave near the Blake Transit Center, and looking at how improvements there can support both affordable housing as well as improvements to transit service. So those partnerships are really key thing. And it seemed, many people that participated in the workshops said they were appreciative of knowing that those partnerships were taking off and were working. Next slide. So one of the great things that we got to do was put together this virtual whiteboard. Of course, we couldn't do our normal in-person, roll up the sleeves, crowd around a bunch of plans and drawings and look at these corridors. But we used a virtual whiteboard platform, and some of the screen captures of that are here. We'll be making these boards available to review. You can see just sticky notes plastered all over this as we held kind of breakout sessions, and people were able to drop in and we could record comments and we could zoom in and look at different areas. So I just wanted to touch on a few of the key findings for each project. On State Street, this is a section that's really focused on Washington down to William Street, that kind of core commercial area on State Street. And some of the big things that we heard is, really a strong interest in making this a flexible and adaptable street, recognizing that this really needs to be a street to serve all modes and all users. Kind of a recognition that the way it's currently configured, there's just not really enough width for anybody to get much out of it. The sidewalks are very narrow. There's not enough space for sort of outdoor commercial uses and business uses. So rethinking through a design for State Street that looks at one of these kind of curbless street designs might be a way of getting at that. So we're getting into the design process for that. Next slide, please. And so some of the kind of key next steps on the State Street one, just to acknowledge, as Amber mentioned at the onset, the DDA has allocated funding to do the street redesign work for this core area. That's also in partnership with the city that's going to be doing resurfacing and water main improvements kind of even further out along State Street and part of North University. So that's a good partnership that will be continuing. As our designs get refined and developed a bit further this spring and summer, we'll be continuing to reach back out to businesses and property owners to make sure that they're engaged in that process. Ultimately, we're looking to go out to bid later this year for construction to start on that core portion of the project in 2022. So Division Street, this project was really building on the pilot project and looking at how we could make the two-way bikeway pilot project into a permanent project. Something to, and some of the things that we heard, again, consistent with the feedback that we received on the pilot, was that this was overall a well-supported idea. We didn't really get a ton of discussion on the design or the layout of the bikeway itself, which is fine, but we got a lot of really interesting feedback in terms of how we can make sure that, while we're making the bikeway improvements on Division, that we're also using that as an opportunity to improve kind of the safety and comfort for all other users too. So we got a lot of feedback around specific intersections and how we might make the crossings better or safer, or explore ideas around raised intersections or raised crossings at certain points to just kind of help manage the speed and flow of vehicles along there and make it, again, a kind of a safer environment for everyone. So next slide. The Division Street project, this is actually scheduled for construction later this year. So it's on a very quick time frame. And so we'll be working, we are working already right now on the design for this Division Street project. And we'll be working with the city to go through kind of that review and approval for the design, and construction potentially will start later this fall and would be wrapped up in November. So if there's questions about the kind of details of that, we can take those questions in a minute. Miller and Catherine, so this was another pilot project. The big shift, just to let everyone know, as we looked at alternatives for Miller and Catherine, the pilot project, you might recall, was on the north side of Miller Catherine, the two-way bikeway. We presented an option that seems to work much better with it on the south side of Miller and Catherine Street. Again, overall, that was well supported. We've had some great kind of one-on-one stakeholder sessions with property owners along that corridor and kind of talked about the shift to the south side and ramifications for that. And that seems to work better for all parties involved. And of course, there's design details to work out, but we'll be working through that. Definitely, also people were supportive of the affordable housing project at 4th and Catherine, and improvements to some of the utility infrastructure could go along with the bikeway project. So those two have a nice overlap. And then in terms of timeline, on the next slide, the recommendation is that this Miller Catherine project be part of the next round of funded DDA people-friendly streets projects. We'll be working through the design of this later this year, kind of, again, also looking at a potential construction in 2022 ahead of the affordable housing project that is a potential to happen at that location. And so, as with other projects, we'll continue to reach out to businesses. The last of the specific projects was looking at 4th Ave. So this is that transit block. We presented a number of different options, 2 different kind of main concepts that we've been developing with kind of hand in hand with the DDA, the city, and the ride. And overall, for this one, there was general support for really kind of reconfiguring this street and making it work as a transit street and serve a broader range of users, creating more sidewalk space, more comfortable places to wait for transit, using things like raised crosswalks and raised intersection approaches to help slow down cars and kind of change a little bit the character and the tempo of the road, to still allow vehicles and cars to get through there, but to really reiterate and kind of drive home the point that this is kind of a transit-oriented street and there's going to be people walking, and for everybody to be moving slowly through this corridor. So the next slide. This is another one that we're recommending be advanced as part of the next round of DDA projects. We'll be wrapping up some conceptual design for this later this spring. And we'll need to be working with both the ride and the DDA and the city to figure out kind of the timing of when this project might land from a construction standpoint. And then the last round of topics that we had during our workshop was kind of looking at all the rest of the streets in the downtown environment, seeing where there were some specific opportunities or ideas that the community had about where improvements could be made. some of the key findings here, just that idea that really prioritizing people and thinking about the livability of the downtown environment overall. The two big specific areas of discussion that weren't tied to the other projects was a discussion around 5th and Division, which is currently a one-way pair, and whether or not those should be restored back to two-way and what the process and timeline might be for evaluating those roadways for that kind of treatment. So that was something that came out of it. Another one is that South Main Street, the commercial section between Huron and William Street, is scheduled for water main work, I believe, in 2023. If I have my year correct. And so people raised the idea that maybe that would be a time to look at a similar kind of curbless or flexible street design on Main Street as part of reconstructing the road after the water main work is done. So that was another kind of big opportunity that jumped out. I think I just touched on those. Yeah, 5th and Detroit. And then I think a couple other points, just a downtown wide kind of consideration for transit and how we're continuing to support and improve transit connections into and through the downtown. And then also a recognition that the kind of needs of that curbside zone, whether it's for parking or pick up and drop off or loading or unloading, is something that is increasingly under pressure, and that having some strategies and a plan in place to support kind of effective use of that curbside zone is important for the just general functioning of the downtown. Okay, so just two other slides to wrap up here. One kind of next step on engagement, two main pieces. One is that we've developed a survey that's going to be going out in paper and electronic format to residents of Housing Commission properties, as well as residents and users of the Delanis Center. This survey is really targeted at trying to understand how those populations and those residents are moving, what some of their transportation needs are, what some of the barriers are that they may be encountering as they move or in and around the downtown environment, so that we can get some clarity and some insight onto what we can do to better serve that community. There's going to be a second interactive mapping tool that gets deployed to the People Friendly Streets website to collect more broad feedback. And then many of the workshop materials, recordings of the presentations, the mural board, and other materials will be available for the public to review as well. So lastly, just a note in terms of the DDA process. As Amber mentioned earlier, there's the State Street project, which has funding allocated. And then, the charge that we were contracted to do was to look at identifying 4 other streets that could be targeted for improvements. And so we'll be bringing recommendations to the DDA board in August for what those specific projects will ultimately be, based on looking at those considerations. So alignment with the value, what the budgets of the projects are, alignment with other city projects, and public input. So with that, I don't know, Amber, if you had anything else to close out with. Otherwise, if there's questions, we're happy to answer those.
Move to questions, so I will stop sharing my screen.
Great, thank you both.
Addie is here with us as well.
All right, Commissioner Boland.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Thanks very much for that presentation. I was curious about the pros and cons of the curbless streets and how you think about what sort of situation would be ideal versus non-ideal for that treatment.
Addie and Oliver, do you mind speaking to this? Addie, maybe you want to start?
Yeah.
Sure. Happy to do it. There's a lot of benefits to a curbless street. I think one of the greatest benefits is that it provides a lot of flexibility. So we see specifically with State Street, we understand that it's not really serving its purpose well for any one user. It's not serving great car usage, pedestrians, bikes, and a lot. And so when you think about having a flexible curbless street, it really helps, respond to the daily, seasonal, yearly needs of the street users. Of course, there are it has to get back to like context of the street. So you want to think about that. And I think State Street is a great opportunity for a curbless street.
Yeah, and something that will, just one other note too, will be working with the other city units and departments too, to talk about kind of the details of maintenance and drainage. And those are all things that are important to sort through from a design standpoint. But, you know, we've been involved with building curbless streets in other Michigan cities. You know, we know a lot of the challenges that need to be dealt with for snow clearing and all of that. So that'll all be part of the process.
Commissioner Lee, I think I saw.
Yeah, just on that topic, you guys don't have any concerns with grade separation, providing kind of a safety element to separate, or are you guys going to be able to effectively use delineators kind of like in a adaptable format? So I mean, do you guys have any concerns about safety? So that's basically it.
No, there's a lot of ways to tackle that challenge, and the transition into the space is one of them. Looking at vertical elements that aren't bollards or flex posts, trees, different elements like that that really kind of help define the space as well. Materiality of the space that helps slow down traffic. I mean, you really want the traffic to be moving through there really slowly, but that doesn't mean traffic doesn't move through. It definitely moves through. Pedestrians generally, like, you have kind of the pedestrian comfort areas on the side. And there's just other kind of elements to there as well. That we can kind of get into the details as we kind of move forward on the shared space, but there's no concerns. You know, one of the biggest shared spaces is Exhibition Road in London, and that has several museums along it. And you have Argyle Street in Chicago, Bell Street in Seattle, and then of course in Michigan. And I think one of the key takeaways from a lot of those is activity at all hours to really help with the balancing of all modes through the space.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. And just a really quick follow-up while we're on State Street. I saw that you guys were planning to do a lot of work in 2022 as far as that water main replacement. Just thinking about our local businesses and how long do we expect that kind of to take? Just given that you know, they've been obviously hammered on State Street from COVID. And then, you know, just as we're getting into that recovery mode. So I know this isn't strictly transportation, but as far as timing and period, hopefully it can be phased in a manner that's least disruptive to the local businesses. So how long do you expect that to take, and how kind of abbreviated and least disruptive can we make it to our tenants and local businesses that are obviously hurting on State Street?
Yeah, and Nick might be able to help me with this one, but currently we're estimating that this is a large project, so it will take the full construction season. Usually we start as early as we can in the spring, and then we're wrapping up in November or early December. In some areas that host art fairs, we're able to start, and then also experience commencement. We're able to start after commencement and pause for art fair. So we'll just have to see how the plans shake out and what we're able to do here. Then I think the key thing with supporting the businesses is making sure that they're involved in shaping and informing the design, and that they're excited about it, so that they know the pain is worth it. And construction is painful. So then we also work with them on promotion and communication and do the best that we can to mitigate that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for other questions or comments. Commissioner Boland.
So you said you could talk a little bit more about the plan for division, since that's coming up quickly.
Oliver, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, is the question, sure. And I may have precipitated an additional question around that. I didn't know, Amber, how much of the backstory we needed to share as far as kind of what was causing that project to be able to be moved forward this year. But I guess the long and the short of it is because of the way the Ashley Street project was bonded, there were some additional construction dollars left over for that has to be spent this fiscal year. And so if we're able to do kind of a quicker build project on Division Street, where the bikeway would be, you know, initially as we're looking at it, kind of more similar to the William Street design, so not a really huge, major full road reconstruction like we saw on First Street, but more like what was done on William Street. The install for that is relatively quick compared to many of the other kinds of projects that we're taking on. So that was a good opportunity to be able to move that forward. I mean, we heard from everybody that we met with, or almost everybody that we met with during the last round of workshops, people really wanting to see these bikeway projects moving forward. People seem to like the way that Division and Miller Catherine one worked last year, and we told people that, yeah, I don't think Miller and Catherine's going to happen this year, and they're like, what? You got to get it moving as fast as you can. So we obviously can't build everything in this year, but that was an opportunity to move Division Street forward this year. So it's kind of.
And then specific to the question of design, right now, the plan that we are advancing is very similar to the pilot, staying on the same side of the street and a very similar configuration.
Yeah.
And I do hope, and I don't know if your schedule can accommodate it, but as we refine these projects, that we bring back updates. And if we're not able to be here on Zoom, we can at least share them in your transportation updates.
Great. Thank you all so much. We are out of time for this one. If there are more questions and comments, as usual, you can send them to Kayla, maybe jot them down now so you don't forget. But thank you all so much. This is really excited. I enjoyed the public engagement last week around the people-friendly streets. It was really helpful and interesting. So thank you.
Great. Thanks so much.
Next up, we invite Commissioner Smith to present the RIDE's service restoration plan.
Thank you very much. And we do have a presentation online available that Kayla, thank you so much, was kind enough to highlight for us in the study guide for commissioners. The online presentation runs about 21 minutes. Enough time for questions. And I'm sorry, my camera just, there we go. I thought I would instead ask folks to have looked at it ahead of time and then just open up my time for questions, and would be happy to answer all that I can. If people have comments, I will take them down as feverishly as I can. I've also got some of my coworkers listening in, so we'll be trying to take down as many of the comments that we get. And if there's specific questions, I would be happy to answer them. So with that, I would be happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks so much. So Commissioner Hull.
Yeah, so I had a few questions that were things that were in the plan that were a little ambiguous. Like, well, first of all, on Route 4, it shows like they got rid of all variations, that it would serve the hospital on all trips. Does that mean it's going to just serve using the cardiovascular center, or is it going to loop around into Mdot like it used to do? Because the map showed it just going to the cardiovascular center, but the previous service was the latter, and I figured it would mention if they changed the stops. So that was a little ambiguous. I have a few other questions and comments here too. Do you want me to go through some of the others, or do you want to?
I tell you what, I am having a little bit of hardware problems here, but if you wanted to go through and ask all of your questions, the ones that I know the answers to, I'll answer right away, and the ones that I don't, I'll have to get back to you.
Okay, so that was the first one. The second one is we have a few routes in there, 6, 24, 26, and 29, that say they're going to alternate to provide service every 30 minutes. Is that just talking about the off-peak? Because they do run peak 30 minutes, I noticed those. And is there any impact on the like peak service? Are they alternating to provide 15-minute service? And that's just what I was wondering. And I also was kind of wondering if they could do the same for the 25 and the 27 to provide more frequent service to the Meyer, just because those don't have necessarily common shared segments, but they have the common shared destination of the Meyer. If anyone's trying to get to the Blake from Meyer, seems like alternating those might make sense. And the other comment question about the 6 would be, are they looking at rerouting that to Research Park Drive once the signal is there? And on the 23, is the Green Road service on every trip or just some trips? And does it serve Plymouth and Green? Because there are conflicting statements on that.
Okay, you ran ahead of my ability to write, but hopefully my coworkers on the recording captured all of those. And at the moment, I'm going to have to say that I'll have to get back to you on all of those because I wasn't able to capture every single one, and the ones that I did, I don't know the answer to off the top of my head. But we can certainly, I do know how to get in touch with you, Tim, so I can make sure that not only will the commission get your answer, but we'll email you directly too.
Yeah, I did have some comments too. I did submit them through the form, but I don't know if you want to hear them here. Because those were more questions.
I have seen them. So
okay, so you've seen my comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same ones that were in my emails or my message. So yeah.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Boland.
Hi, I wanted to understand better the rationale for getting rid of the old Route 60, which went all the way to the hospital and through Central Campus Transit Center. So now it's called 34 and it stops at the Blake, and it seems it's covers, except for the very end of the route, it covers the same territory as the 31 now. And so it seems like we're losing something that was unique about the 60, and we're not really gaining much because it duplicates, for the most part, the 31.
I believe that was done to address timing issues on the 60, and then it's going to be looped in with, give me just a second here to pull it up, find it. That it will connect with Route 23 so that and then 23 will go on to the medical center. So I believe that was done for timing issues, but I can, again, I'll take down the question and make sure that I'm right and have an answer back for the commission.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Hadamaki.
Yeah, from a big picture point of view, it seems like some of the changes are for timing. Are there other changes that are financially driven due to the previous year we've had? And does the route anticipate getting any of the money from the American Recovery Plan? Is there a revenue sharing that from what the city's getting? Would that help or change any of these route changes or improve service in any other ways if you guys were able to share in some of the money that appears to be coming towards the city soon?
So I think the key there probably is appears in that the most recent act that was passed. The FTA is still working out exactly what funds we would get. We have been in receipt of funds from the previous two bills. And one of the cautions that we have with that is that so far it's all one-time money. None of it has been identified as permanent increases. And so it's very difficult to fund ongoing service improvements with one-time money. But we can do things like the vaccine shuttle that we started up just today, for example, is expected to be a short-term deal, and we'll have a start and a stop date. So we're funding that out of those federal funds. I don't know of any ability of the city to share what it might get. I do know that we'll get some portion of what was dedicated to transit. And without going out too far on a limb, I would guess that the city would have the ability to spend the money. I mean, as we sit in these meetings, we hear the need throughout. So I wouldn't want to assume anything from that regard.
Commissioner Parsons.
Yeah, and if I may,
Never mind.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify and underscore, as Commissioner Smith mentioned, the AAATA has gotten 3 rounds of kind of COVID relief, but the city will only, this last package that came through, this will be the first installment that the city's getting. So I think what Commissioner Smith said is probably fair. I think there's a lot of needs at the city that are probably going to gobble up the one-time allocation that the city's going to get. I don't have a figure what that number is, though. I don't know what the final amount is yet.
Thank you. Commissioner Parsons.
Brian, I just wanted to first just acknowledge and say thank you that the jigsaw puzzle that you guys all have to put together is just mind-boggling. After watching that presentation multiple times, I can only imagine what you guys have to go through to try to piece it all together. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And I think that we have a first-rate transit group that can always be better, of course, but I really commend on what you guys are doing. 2 things that struck me. One is that Route 23 with the park and ride near Plymouth. This might be more long-term, but that's a circuitous route to stop at the park and ride and then ride for like a half an hour or more downtown. And I'm just wondering if there's considerations about some dedicated shuttle buses or ways to get from park and rides into downtown in a quicker manner than doing the sort of long neighborhood route. And then in connection to that, I noticed that a lot of the a number of the routes anyway, we're going to quote, add time to peak hour trips to improve on-time performance, which is commendable, right? We want to make sure that things run on time. That sounds to me like things need to slow down a little bit, and the timetable is gonna match that. What, as a transportation commission, as a city, can we do to make things just more efficient all around? Maybe that's the big picture thing that I'm sort of thinking about in this big picture thing. But again, thank you.
So as far as having a more direct run from the Plymouth Park and Ride, I believe part of the rationale for the routing really is the demand is to get from the park and ride to the hospital primarily rather than downtown. But that may be kind of a cart and horse sort of thing where that's the demand because that's where it goes as opposed to having a more direct route. So it would be hard to say there. And then as far as what could the city do or the Transportation Commission do to make the bus routes more efficient, we are partnering with the city. It's been a long time in process, but on getting signal prioritization, working with the city lights, for example. But as with a jigsaw, when you take a puzzle piece and change its shape, it has a cascading effect. So I don't know that I would have an answer that I could frame in anything other than a thesis as to what could be done, and everything would include trade-offs. So that's a very vague answer, I realize, but probably about the best I can give you, if I'm going to be honest.
I'm curious what kinds of assessments were made in making these decisions, knowing that there are all of these trade-offs. What kind of considerations were in place around equity concerns? So things like routes through neighborhoods where we know there are lower rates of car ownership, the sort of the routes in and out of Ypsilanti. I'm curious how, like, I didn't see in the presentation how those were considered. So I'm curious if and how that played into these decisions.
So I'm writing your question down as you're asking so that I can make sure to get a more fulsome answer. But the short answer is that we are obligated as part of any kind of plan change to do a Title VI assessment of these changes, which includes low income, low car ownership, also, basically the wide range of disadvantaged populations, and whether or not we are disproportionately affecting them with these changes. So that's just part of our normal planning process. I'll also say with a little bit of excitement that we got a new tool this fall, or this last winter rather, a software package called Remix, which helps do that on the fly, because it has the ability to draw the route and then tell you all of that census data in real time. So as you draw the route, you can see access to jobs and walking distance and income and all of those things. So it's a really cool tool, not being in the planning department directly, but seeing it from the side. It's neat to be able to see those effects and say, well, what if we went this way instead of that way? So they were considered as part and parcel because of that ability, but we also have, I would have to talk with our planning department, but we also have an obligation to do a full-throated Title VI analysis that I imagine we would be able to post if the request was made.
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting to see. And thanks for that explanation. Are there any other Councilmember Briggs?
Thanks. So looking through, it looks like the Route 33 that goes down Newport, there's no longer weekend service at all on that route, which seems a little concerning for that part of the community, that there wasn't Sunday service and now there isn't Saturday service. I know when I was out knocking doors this last year, that was one of the issues. I heard a resident saying, I wish there was later night service on Friday and Saturday nights. This was a younger resident saying, if I wanted to go downtown and go to a bar or something like that, I can't do that on the bus. So I guess just concern around no weekend service for that route. And then it looks like, again, on Route 29 on Liberty, Sunday service is discontinued. So I'm just curious what's going into the factors that go into discontinuing service.
For those two routes, I would have to get specifics to make sure that I was 100% accurate. But in general, if we eliminated a route, it would be due to low ridership at that time. So the Route 33 on Saturdays most likely had a ridership low enough that it was hard to justify continuing to run that instead of, for example, the 3 that connects Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor together. And so it's a trade-off of having to find hours where we had lower than expected ridership and put that towards something where we think we can have higher demand. But I have taken down the comment as a concern, and will make sure that I'm not inaccurate in that assessment about the demand for those runs.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Hall.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that Route 33 because that actually relates to what Michelle Hughes was saying about I know part of it had to do with scooters. I'm hoping maybe you can address that part later at some point, but also she mentioned that the Route 33 was not running and as such had to walk farther, and that was part of the need for the scooter. And there was some other appointment that there was like additional walking. I'm hoping that some of these service restorations help that, though this does point out a big thing that if that was a weekend, there still would be no Route 33. So yeah, I just wanted to raise that as an actual concern, that there are people that aren't eligible for a ride that can't necessarily walk to the route that does run, but there's like no flex ride or other options, and that there are these cases that fill between the cracks. And yeah, I mean, she raises a good point about these scooters, and I would like to know more about it, because it sounds like, from what I've heard, the responses to it have been stuck in, oh, this is being discussed in a committee. And yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that actually was related. We talked because Route 33 was brought up. And
Okay. I will add that to the comment on service for the weekends for 33 and 29.
Commissioner Valderrama.
Yeah, I was a similar thought process as like Commissioner Hole, just thinking about the engagement. And I know that as a commission, we've been talking about equitable engagement and just really identifying the gaps where, for even if it's like a handful of people, where Saturday might be the only way to go to the grocery store, and just thinking about like the value that we ascribe to like a single ridership can definitely impact like someone's ability to get groceries as well. So that's where my concern is, and making sure that those people that were using it also either like have an alternative, or just, yeah, starting to think about that a little bit more.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just to tack on to that, because there's no weekend service on Miller as well, that you're really cutting that entire portion of town off of weekend service. So that seems problematic.
I'm not seeing any other questions or comments, so I think we will move on from here. Thank you so much, Commissioner Smith. This was really helpful. It was great to see all of those maps, and yeah, well, this is still a work in progress. Is that correct? The final plan isn't coming for another couple of months.
That is absolutely true. And in fact, some of the feedback we've gotten has been more towards the, we provided comments last time and no changes were made, and this is all just a farce. And unfortunately, the last time we had a service change was when we had to ramp down service, and we didn't have this opportunity. It was with the pandemic, emergency related. With this, one of the part of what I had promised, because I led that effort, was that when we did come back, it would be with a fulsome and equity-driven look at what the changes are going to be. And so I feel very strongly that I can say confidently, we are taking this input, we are listening. Everything does come with choices and balances, but we are taking all of that in, and we'll be coming back in June and July with, here's what we did based on the comments that we heard. So, this is the time to bring those things up so that we can make the changes for that plan to be presented as next here in this summer.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So next up, the Healthy Streets Committee is going to provide a brief update on the committee progress. Commissioner Balderrama, I wasn't sure if you wanted to take this. I'm also happy to go for it. Okay. You're muted, but I'm going to assume that means you want me to talk. So we've had one committee meeting so far where we got to talk a bit about sort of what our goals are going to be for looking at the healthy streets, because it's a really tight timeline. At our next meeting, which I'm blanking on the date, but Kayla, I'm hopeful that you have it handy.
Next committee meeting?
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Next committee meeting is tomorrow, and we're going to get a look at some draft plans for the Healthy Streets installations for this coming season. And as always, these are open to the public, and so anyone who's not on the committee is welcome to attend, and I extend that also to any members of the public who are watching. And so it's going to be a chance for us to see some plans and give some feedback before they're finalized. And I think that's really about it for I think those are the key things. And then once that gets going, our next meeting will be somewhere in the middle, once things are in place, for us to give some feedback on the implementation.
Yeah, I think that one is in June.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly, but yeah, the committee will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and the information is in Legistar about how to access that for the public. So anyone following along or listening at home, please join if you are interested.
Thanks. And if any committee members want to add anything, please go for it. Okay, great. Moving right along. I'm now going to open the meeting for discussion on the municipal sidewalk snow removal resolution, which is in your packets. As a bit of a reminder, last month we reviewed and made recommendations related to a sort of comprehensive citywide snow removal resolution that did end up going before council. Some of the suggestions that the commission made were incorporated into that final resolution. And the resolution before us now actually was introduced before the one that we reviewed last month, but the way timing worked, we weren't able to look at it at that time. This one concerns only the DDA area, the Downtown Development Authority area, and it's, I think, a lot more limited in scope, but it was officially referred to the commission for review, and so we've got a little time on the agenda here to talk about it if we want to. Given that this other resolution passed, we may also, oh, thank you, Kayla. We can see what we want to do. So I'm going to ask folks to use the raise hand feature since we've got a screen share going. So if you have something to say, you'll pop up and I should be able to see you and call on you. And what we have in front of us is the resolution we're discussing. Commissioner Felt.
So I'm a little bit confused. The resolution that we sent to them was accepted, or do they? So there's one that says citywide, we're going to investigate that, and then this one specifically for the DDA.
Right. So the citywide one passed. There were some revisions that were made, some of which they took into account some of the concerns that this commission raised. So the timeline has been shortened. So there will be a pilot this coming year instead of waiting 2 years for a pilot. But I think it's just partly the vagaries of timing that this one, we weren't able to review this one at our last meeting, but it was referred to us. And my understanding is that council still wants us to give some review or a response to this resolution.
And my follow-up question is, I was under the impression that this already existed and that the DDA had a limited area that was that had a contractor hired to do this type of snow removal already. And is that true? Do we know?
I can chime in on that. So it's not, there's the DDA is treated very differently. So there's a bid business improvement district for the Main Street area that is responsible for snow clearance in that kind of a certain part of the DDA, but and State Street has done snow clearance to some degree in their area, but it's a little piecemeal. So so in terms of what, this is Councilmember Ramlawi brought this forward and really wanted to have a very specific look at the downtown. There are pieces that are incorporated into the resolution that we adopted last month, but I think he would and others would appreciate Transportation Commission's feedback on that.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it seems to me that a lot of this work is encompassed by the resolution that did pass last month. But yeah, so I have a couple more hands, Commissioner Hadamaki and then Commissioner Hull.
Yeah, similarly, my comment is I think this is kind of overcome by events, and I see this as being, like you said, encompassed by the replacement resolution. And in fact, I was a little bit hoping that the resolution that did pass that Councilmember Briggs brought forward. It sounded like at the council meeting there was some trepidation about that not going through this commission, and I don't know if that's a necessary step or would make any. I mean, it did pass, so I don't know that it's needed, but yeah, I view this one as being overcome by events anyway.
Okay, Commissioner Hull.
Yeah, so I kind of think this seems a bit redundant or just unnecessary given the passage of the other resolution, that we don't necessarily need it specifically for downtown if we're studying it for the whole city. I feel like if there's something that they want to do specific for downtown, that might be more in the DDA's purview. And just, yeah, I just think that, yeah, we're already proceeding with a citywide type thing.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Felt, does your hand up again, or is it just still there from before? Okay.
From before.
Okay, cool. So I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Given that it seems as though the consensus is that the goals of this are met by the resolution that we reviewed last month, that has since been passed. And so can we take no action, Kayla? Is there a way to sort of convey back that this seems redundant?
I think that you do need to take some action, even if it's to say that you have reviewed. I think you could possibly make a motion that you've reviewed the resolution and have no comments or feedback to share. I think just like a commission motion and agreement that there's nothing you'd like to share would be substantial if you want to go that route, or you could take a motion, I think, to say that either in support of council defeating this resolution. So
Okay.
to say that you don't want to see this approved.
Okay. I see Commissioner Parsons, looks like you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I don't want to add a can of worms to it. And you know, I think that we're fine to stay mute on the topic. My general thought is that I much prefer the new resolution over this old DDA focused, and perhaps a communication that while the DDA and the downtown is important, they're just part of a transportation corridor that connects other parts of transportation corridors, and that we need to be looking holistically and connectivity involved. I don't know if we want to wrap that all in, but that's why I am personally pleased from a transportation commission standpoint that we're thinking broader and bigger than just those parameters set forth with the DDA boundaries.
Okay.
So I'll leave that. I can go either way when it comes to what we want to actually say, but I think that's the underlying sort of sentiment from me.
Yeah. I have an idea, and then I will call on more people. So at our last meeting, our resolution was not specifically about the proposed resolution that we reviewed, but we came out with a resolution that, Kayla, you might have the language in front of you. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of the commission believes that the city should be investing in municipal citywide snow removal, that we view this as being an urgent priority for budgeting and for planning purposes. So what we might do today is a resolution that says something along the lines of the resolution that City Council passed seems to meet the goals that we endorse the goal of municipal sidewalk snow removal, and we view this as an urgent need requiring priority for city funding and planning. So what we could do is a resolution that says the already passed resolution around city sidewalk snow removal seems to fulfill the goals of the resolution we passed last month, and we believe that no further action by council is needed at this time. That's what I'm going to propose. thoughts about that? I'm not seeing, oh, Commissioner Felt, did you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say that I generally support that idea. I can't think that I like it better than this, which does seem to segregate things. And just as Brad was saying, yeah, I read this and said, well, but how are people supposed to get downtown in order to walk around?
Right, exactly.
The only option would be to drive.
Yeah.
And that's giving the wrong message.
Yeah. Councilmember Briggs, did you have something you wanted to
add? I just wanted to call out kind of the elements of the resolution that was passed by council at the last meeting, and that spoke specifically to the DDA. And also, I should have started by saying thank you to everybody last month for all the feedback, because I think it really resulted in a substantially different resolution. And but just specifically the components of the resolution that was passed that focused on the DDA, it calls for strategies for addressing problems by zone and area, and specifically calls out the DDA as one of those zones. And then it directs the city administrator to pilot solutions, preferably along a major transit corridor, and in the DDA during the winter of 2021-2022, recognizing that because there's a lot of elements that are kind of already at work within the DDA, that might be an easier area to address some of the sticky issues. Yeah, I certainly would prefer not to see a resolution that voting against this resolution. I'm not sure that that's necessary, but kind of positive sort of feedback back would be, I think, more helpful.
And do one of you have the name or whatever we call it of that resolution, just so we can get the words right in what we're about to pass?
I think if someone has it handy, that's great. Or we can have a placeholder and I'll put in the resolution number, because if it's a past resolution, there'll be a R dash something something. So if you want to, Molly, if you have an idea of what you want to say, you can just say,
okay,
R dash blank, and I'll fill that in.
Great. So Commissioner Hadamaki.
Okay, is the resolution in question, what state is it in postponement? Has it been tabled? Is it coming back at a specific date that we need to give specific guidance for, or is it just, we can just kind of ignore it?
Well, so we're oh, you mean the one that's on the agenda for today?
Exactly. Yeah. Do we need to directly address it?
Yeah, that one was officially referred to Transportation Commission, which was the formal council action. And then once we have an action, it will go back to council.
Right. And so it can't go back to council until we take our action. That it moved from council to the commission, and it is now with us until we take action, and it moves back to the commission or to city council. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm going to propose a resolution. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Felt.
Yeah, I needed a few minutes to kind of figure out why this struck me as a bad idea, and now I have it, which is that it says basically that the reason why why the DDA area is more important is because most of the incidents and most of the people are downtown. And I think that the premise of this is in opposition to our original statement, which was that this is urgently needed throughout the whole city. That if we're thinking about transportation corridors, this is not that. It specifically doesn't address the issue of corridors. It doesn't address the issues of continuity. And that's actually why this, I had a very negative reaction to this specific resolution. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm sort of hashing this out as we go, but I'm going to propose a resolution that says the Transportation Commission, and Kayla, I have this half written down, and I can get it the rest of the way written down and send it to you. But the Transportation Commission has reviewed the snow removal resolution that has passed, so whatever that one is, on whatever that date was, and believes that it fulfills the goals of the resolution that we passed last month, and that no further action by council is needed at this time. Is that going to be sufficient or do we need to specifically call out this resolution that we're reviewing now as something that is not needed, and that does not fulfill the goals that we set out?
No, I think that's sufficient.
Okay.
We want them to take action, but not this action.
Well, so
well, they've already taken. Do you want them to take an additional action?
Well, we want them to do the study and to.
Right. We want them to do so they already they passed that one.
Right.
Last month. So that's why I was saying no further.
But no action on this resolution is needed.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So yeah. So no action on this resolution is needed.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to read this out loud. The Transportation Commission has reviewed R21-084 and believes that it fulfills the goals of the resolution passed by the Transportation Commission on February 17th, 2021. And so I guess we need like an end. Therefore, the Transportation Commission believes that no further action is needed from City Council at this time.
On this resolution.
Okay. All right. On this, no action on this resolution is needed at this time, or on whatever the number of this resolution.
This doesn't have a resolution number, as far as I know, because it doesn't get a resolution number until it's a passed resolution.
Okay, so then the title, whatever this title is, municipal sidewalk snow removal, which is pretty similar to the name of the one that did pass. I think maybe it had citywide in the name. So yeah, if you could add the name of that other one eventually. But so, okay.
I'd be willing to move that.
Okay, great. So this is moved by Commissioner Feltz. Do I have a second? Commissioner Hadamaki. Any further discussion? I'm not seeing any hands. So I think.
I have one question, just since we're moving on to another agenda item after this. Procedurally, what happens with this, Kayla, afterwards in terms of the resolution that came from council? Will it be referred back and appear on the council agenda, or is that, would the original sponsor have the ability to remove it from the, I guess they always have that, but I'm just curious what option?
Yeah, it's my understanding that with this, so we have to, when I enter this in Legistar, have to assign a date that it gets referred back to City Council. And in looking ahead, I think April 5th is the soonest date that it could be referred ahead. So that's what I would likely pick, unless the commission chooses any other specific date. But we don't usually talk in that detail, and I just choose one. So anyways, it goes on to a council agenda, and it would be an agenda item for council action at that point, unless, and I believe it would have to be whomever sponsored it. So Councilmember Ramlawi in this case could withdraw it from council's agenda.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think, I think that is the process. I don't think there are other
I just wanted to make sure I was able to communicate properly to him what was going on. Thanks.
Great, thanks. So if there's no further discussion, I think we can take a vote. So all those in favor, physically raise your hand. All those opposed? And any abstentions? So I'm seeing this passing unanimously. All right, thanks everyone for muddling through that together. And now we are going to move on to staff report and updates from Raymond Hess.
All right, thank you. So this shouldn't take very long. Just a few highlights I want to bring to your attention. South Industrial concrete pavement repairs, you heard a little bit about that already this evening from Dave Dykeman. There was a public meeting held last week, and that work is anticipated to begin in April or May. So again, that does include some bike lanes and maybe a small section of road diet as well, is what we anticipate. Sidewalk gaps, Manchester Drive was on the list, then it wasn't on the list, but now funding has been found, so it's back on the list. So that's good news. There is a new gap that's going to be filled again. Bridge maintenance, construction has begun on Island Drive and the Broadway bridges. So you might experience some delays if you're going over those bridges. People-friendly streets, construction resumed on 1st and Ashley Street this month. So again, you're going to see some activity out there. Again, the construction season is starting to pick back up. So this list of projects and updates will get longer as the construction cycle moves on. People-friendly streets part 2, you had a pretty lengthy presentation tonight from DDA, so I won't go into any additional details there. Healthy streets, we talked about a little bit already. A couple of things that I did want to highlight that weren't mentioned. A public engagement survey tool was launched March 5th. So if you have not seen that, or if you have not filled it out, please do so yourself and share it among your networks. We are accepting comments through April 2nd. April 2nd will allow us to kind of synthesize those comments and you know, make any last minute changes that might need to be made before we bring it back to council. Mdot Coordination, a couple of things to bring to your attention. At Huron and 7th, which is kind of that offset interchange, Mdot has analyzed that and is proposing prohibiting the southbound left turn movement at this intersection. We're still looking that over to see if that makes the most sense, and then we'll probably engage with Councilmember Rumlawi, who really brought this issue to light, and then see if additional public outreach or what have you would be needed if we decide to pursue this. So just wanted to give you an idea of what the contemporary thinking is at the moment, but still a lot to figure out on that. And then the Jackson pedestrian crossings, a couple of things to note here. There have been some discussions that have been ongoing over the last couple of months. Mdot has confirmed that the road diet on Jackson is final and is permanent. So that has opened up the doorway for us to have conversations about uncontrolled crosswalks along Jackson, because there are very long stretches without any crosswalks. So we started to meet internally, and then there was also a meeting with residents and Mdot staff that occurred in February of 2021. We're currently kind of gathering all of our thoughts in a memo that we'll share with Mdot just to get an initial feel from them in terms of what might be feasible or what might not be feasible. And then we'll probably also go out for some public engagement on it as well once we get further along in that process. Streetlights, we've hit the reset button for 2021. So we've installed 13 so far this year, and 279 streetlight outages have been addressed so far for 2021. Traffic calming, you already are aware of this, but City Council did approve the Glenwood traffic calming. I think just in the written report we had last month, it had not yet, the timing was such that you hadn't seen this in writing, but I think you're already aware of it. And then lastly, on the transportation plan updates, we're still accepting public comments through the end of this month. So if you haven't had a chance to review the document and provide official public comment, you're welcome to do that. There still will be public hearings and other opportunities. As you all know, we're planning for a joint session with the Planning Commission and you all on April 20th. And then we hope that, you know, if that leads to a recommendation, we'll take this before City Council. Late breaking news, we probably will take this to City Council in June, but take it to City Council for a work session in May so that they'll see it 2 times. That's what we're thinking at the moment. May is always a little difficult because there's the second meeting in May for City Council, the budget deliberation, and we tried to not have a lot of extra stuff on the agenda that night. So, so we're looking at a work session in May and then bringing it back to them in June. And that concludes my updates, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Great, thanks so much, Commissioner Hull, and then Commissioner Hadamaki.
Any update on Research Park Drive? I've heard that was supposed to be something coming this year, but I haven't seen anything on it. And I was kind of wondering about it in the context of because AAATA had their is working on their service updates. And yeah, obviously that's one of the benefits of having the crosswalk there, is you could route it down that street both ways.
Yeah, so that project is still in the works. I think we provided an update in January. Don't quote me on that, but in the last couple months, we provided an update that pretty much said, you know, we're waiting on the poles to arrive. We're waiting for some concrete work to occur. Now that the weather's clearing, I think we'll be able to do that concrete work. And I think the poles are oh, Nick has his hands up, so he might even know.
Just happened to drive by there today. The poles and the signals are up. They're still bagged, but they are up now. So
look at that.
We're just going to be waiting. I guess the next step would be once the contractors get moving for this year to get the concrete work going and get the crosswalks installed.
Yeah, that must have just happened because normally I have a team check-in on Monday and I would have gotten that update. So I don't think that they were up
new.
last week. And Tim, just so you, or Commissioner Hall, what we will have when that project clears kind of the next step, probably for your next month's meeting, we'll have a written update in your monthly report, just so you can continue to track when there are updates on that.
Okay.
Commissioner Hadamaki.
Yeah, for traffic calming, Glenwood is a go. What else is in the hopper? What petitions are you guys considering? Do you have any? Or what projects are in various states of study for traffic calming? What's coming?
Yes, so we do have several projects in the queue. Bear with me for a second, just as I pull open the website so I can give you a definitive answer. The one thing I will note while I'm pulling this up, you may recall that
I can, Raymond, as you're navigating, I can give a quick rundown of what's in the queue for traffic calming petitions. So after Glenwood, the next would be Rosedale, Packard to Redwood, Longman, North Fairview, Jackson to Dexter, North Side, Barton to Pontiac Trail, Granger, State to Packard, Granger, South Forest to Olivia, Fulmer, Miller to Foss, Baldwin, Packard to Stadium. So those are on, if you visit the website, a2gov.org/traffic calming and choose projects, you will see a complete listing of the petitions currently in queue.
Yeah, and if I want to make a couple of things clear too, you may recall Fernwood, which we constructed late last season, actually kind of zeroed out the traffic calming budget because it was a fairly expensive project. It was over $100,000. I think it was close to $150,000. Part of that was because there were raised intersections, so it was a much more kind of intensive traffic calming project than we've historically done. So what that meant was we were able to finish the Glenwood process, but we didn't have any funding for Glenwood. Glenwood is in the realm of like $85,000. So Glenwood will eat up the lion's share of next fiscal year's budget. So we will be able to do probably a process. We can, go through the traffic calming process on maybe one or two, maybe three, but probably two projects. But then depending upon the scale of them, there may not be construction dollars in the next fiscal year. They'd have to wait the year after. So, it's hard to believe that we used to try to run traffic calming with just $30,000 or thereabouts, and now it's like $130,000, and we're still, chewing through the budget pretty readily. So that budget really dictates how much we can do, both in terms of process as well as construction. So long story short, next year's budget is largely accounted for, $85,000 out of the proposed $130,000.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at with such a long list on the website, and recently it's been more like one a year, and then it's a long list of potential projects. So
yeah, I guess
where to go with that, but
my question then for Councilmember Briggs is whether there's any possibility of bringing an increased traffic calming budget to council, if not for this year's budget, which I know is very much in process and everyone's dealing with cuts, but looking ahead, it seems like this is about to become a situation where we barely have a neighborhood traffic calming program if we can only fund one a year.
This is definitely an issue dear to my heart, so I will try to mention it once or twice.
Great, thanks. I see that we are.
And in all fairness to Councilmember Briggs, I don't think staff has proposed augmenting that budget, just because we knew it was kind of a tight budget year, and also, you know, I think you've heard me say this before, the costs fluctuate widely. It just, you know, some years we can have, you know, if you look at the Scioto Church Service Road, that project was, don't quote me on the figure, but I think it was under 20,000, right? So if we have a bunch of projects like that scale, we can do a bunch with 130,000. But when we have one project that's 150,000, it sets us back a whole year. So it just really depends on, you know, and we have no idea what the outcome of the you know, what treatment will be installed until we go through the process and work with the neighborhood. So it's hard to really, you know, come up with an accurate estimate just because it can just vary so much.
Yeah, thank you. We're at 9 o'clock, so I think I'm going to move us along to the various other reports and updates so that we can fly through this last bit. So liaison reports, any commissioners who specifically serve as liaison to another body. Commissioner Hall.
Yeah, so I'm on the Commission on Disability Issues, and today we had a commenter, Michelle Hughes, who mentioned the issue with the AAATA policy on electric scooters. And I'm kind of wondering if we can take some kind of action. It would be nice to have a response from AAATA as to whether this is actually the policy or this was just a rogue driver deciding to enforce something, which sometimes, yeah, things like that can happen. I mean, I didn't see on their website an explicit policy, though it could just fall into the generic, we refuse to transport hazardous materials. They consider the battery hazardous for some reason, but I would like to see if we could possibly take an action on this, because I mean, I know that, yeah, it's just, yeah, I mean, see, the problem there is that the buses don't always serve everywhere, particularly with COVID. They've cut down to essential routes. And here we have, like, there's no Route 33, so you have to go farther, and then you have to go farther away. And yeah, it's just, the scooter's a good way to actually plug those holes that doesn't necessarily require more funding, which is what AAATA would require, like adding service to those areas, which would obviously be great, but requires more funding. And obviously, yeah, you can mention a ride, but that not everyone's eligible for that. There's a
Commissioner Holt, sorry, I apologize to interrupt, but it does sound like this is sort of bleeding into a discussion of this topic. Would it be possible that we note this as a future agenda item, and then Chair Kleinman and I can work to schedule it for a future meeting?
Yeah, that would be possible. If we could also get information from AAATA, that would be good. And just
we can work on that. Thank you.
Consider a resolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I have the same questions, so we can definitely do that. And Commissioner Smith, it looks like you wanted to.
If I could just give a brief answer without talking about the specifics of the commenter this evening. We do not have a formal policy against transporting foldable e-scooters. So we are going to be putting out a company-wide just clarification so that our operators know that. I don't want to speak to the specifics of this one because I haven't talked with the operator. Find out if there were any extenuating circumstances, but we don't prohibit them. We do prohibit, and I don't know if this was part of the confusion, but like the spin bikes, where we don't allow folks to bring those on, but that's not what this was. So I just wanted to make clear we don't have a policy against it, and we are providing clarification to our operators so that they know that they are allowed.
Great. So maybe we can get an update on the situation at our next meeting and go from there. Thank you. Other liaison reports. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, a couple. One, I serve on the council liaison to the Watts Policy Committee, and a couple points of interest that came up there. There was a discussion around extra funds that Watts is going to receive. not sure if they're exactly through the stimulus funds or if they're separate, somehow COVID related. It's going to be an influx of $2.5 million. But there was a discussion around how those funds should be spent, and there seemed to be general interest in thinking about using them in a more regional equity driven approach. And the Reimagine Washtenaw project came up as a project that has long been standing, that was of interest to further explore and figure out how that might be able to be viewed, and was going to go to the technical committee and then come back for some more specifics, but potentially exciting news there. And then I shared with Kayla, and maybe this will just go out in the next homework guide or something like that, but also a pretty good report that Watts staff put together about pedestrian and bicycle crashes across the county. So I haven't gotten a chance to review it in depth, but it looked like something that would be of interest to all of you as well. So just take a look out for that. That'll get shared at some point. From council, it went through first reading, a ordinance. Councilmember Ramlawi proposed a change to the fees for that our homeowners would get if they don't remove, if they get a violation for not clearing their sidewalks completely. And so the proposal will be coming us back for second reading at our next meeting. The proposal is to change the first time fee for the individual would be $140. That's a $100 fee plus $40 court fees is my understanding, and that would be reduced to $100. So a $60 fee plus the $40. The second and ongoing fees after that would remain the same. So just something to take a look at. I know we don't get a chance to talk about as a commission, but you may have some thoughts on it. I had this is maybe me just throwing something out for staff to consider. I don't know if this is a good idea, but I had a meeting with constituents today who are concerned around, it's been an ongoing series of meetings around the noise pollution that comes off of M14 due to some resurfacing, particularly due to some resurfacing issues. So that's a separate one. But one of the things that came up was issues of air quality around highways. And it got me thinking around our initiative to plant 1,000 trees in the community. And I thought there might be an opportunity to consider how those trees, if they're planted maybe in proximity to our highways as a buffer, might serve an additional purpose for our community, albeit small. So planting that seed if it has any merit. And then I don't know if this is something that the commission has discussed anytime recently, but a possible next agenda for our upcoming meeting would be to review have a presentation on the crosswalk design guidelines. I know that there's been some discussions that I've heard around crosswalk designs on busier corridors, and should they have more bells and whistles, essentially. I know that comes at additional cost, but I don't know if the commission has taken a look at those guidelines recently and just evaluated in them in terms of recent projects, if maybe that might be something that engineering staff could come in and just kind of talk about what the criteria is that leads to those recommendations. And that's all from me.
Great, thank you. Any other liaison reports? So moving on to general commissioner member communications, all commission members are invited to share reports and updates. Commissioner Smith.
Just a very quick note, if anybody missed it, we are starting a vaccine shuttle today. So we've got a fixed route shuttle that runs between the BTC and YTC, stopping at EMU. A-Ride service is free to the vaccine clinic, and anywhere outside of our A-Ride area, but still within Scioto Township, Pittsfield Township, Superior, and Ann Arbor Township, you can ride Flex Ride, and again at no charge, just to get people to and from the vaccine
All right, so I'm not seeing any other commission member communications. So moving on to a call for agenda items, and this will be, I believe, for the May agenda at this point, because of the work session that we'll be doing in April. So we've accumulated a few agenda items already tonight. We don't need to bring those back up. We've got them. But if you have any other ones, now's the time. And of course, you can also email me and Kayla. Okay. I'm not seeing any agenda items. So as a reminder, the normally scheduled meeting on Wednesday, April 21st is canceled. And in its place, there are two consecutive non-regular meetings. The first is scheduled for Tuesday, April 20th at 6:30 p.m., where we will discuss the fiscal year 22-23 budget. And then the second is directly after that on Tuesday, April 20th at 7 p.m. And that will be a joint session with the Planning Commission to discuss the transportation plan update. These will be virtual meetings on Zoom as we've been doing. So if there are no objections, we will adjourn our March 17th, 2021 meeting. And I'm not seeing any objections, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.